The planet Zyphera hung like a gem in the black velvet of space. From afar, it looked serene, its blue oceans glittering, green forests spreading endlessly, and mountains rising proudly toward the sky. For centuries, it had remained untouched by any civilization capable of space travel. Its inhabitants were not like humans. They were the Thryn, an alien species known for their ability to hide in plain sight. They could change their shapes, blend into shadows, and vanish among trees, rocks, or even the sparkling lakes that dotted the landscape. The Thryn were scholars, not warriors. They had watched countless worlds grow, thrive, and sometimes fall. They kept records of civilizations in secret, careful to interfere as little as possible. To them, observation was a sacred duty. To be seen was a risk too great. The Thryn feared discovery because exposure could lead to destruction. They had survived for centuries by remaining unseen, by being patient, and by trusting in the stillness of their forests. On this particular day, however, the Thryn noticed something different in the stars. A small glimmer appeared in orbit around Zyphera. At first, they thought it was just a passing probe or a comet, harmless and distant. But as the glimmer grew brighter, they recognized it as something much more unusual. A human spaceship. Commander Ilara Vance had been exploring this part of the galaxy for months. Her ship, the Aurora, was small but fast, equipped with advanced sensors, scanners, and communication devices. Ilara was known for her curiosity and fearlessness. She did not rush into danger without thought, but she did not shy away from unknown worlds. Her mission was clear: to explore, to understand, and to make contact if possible. She had been to many planets before, but Zyphera was different. Its atmosphere was perfect for human life. Its forests were dense, full of life unlike any she had ever recorded. And most intriguing of all, her instruments kept picking up faint energy readings she could not explain. As the Aurora descended through Zyphera's atmosphere, the Thryn watched. They shifted their forms, becoming part of the mist and shadows in the treetops. They had never encountered humans before, and the thought of being discovered sent an unusual shiver through their many senses. They had faced many threats over the centuries, but there was something about this human that made them uneasy. Unlike the other explorers who had come and gone, Ilara seemed different. She noticed patterns, paid attention to small details, and approached the world with both caution and intelligence. Ilara stepped onto the soft, moss-covered ground. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of flowers, rain, and damp earth. Birds with bright feathers flitted among the trees, and small creatures scurried among roots and rocks. Everything seemed peaceful, yet her sensors continued to hum faintly. There was an energy here that did not belong to any known species. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Ilara had learned to trust her instincts. She had learned that the universe often hid more than it revealed. She moved carefully, her boots making soft impressions on the soil. Every sound she made, every movement, was measured. She set up a small scanning station near a crystal-clear lake, placing equipment to record energy patterns and environmental data. The Thryn observed from a distance, curiosity mixed with fear. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, but never had they felt the vulnerability they felt now. One wrong move, and this human might see them. One wrong moment, and the centuries of their secrecy could vanish in an instant. Ilara noticed something odd immediately. Small rocks seemed to move when she wasn't looking. A branch fell in a pattern that did not follow natural physics. Her eyes narrowed, and she crouched to examine the area. Tiny imprints marked the ground, too precise and deliberate to be made by any animal. She made notes in her digital pad, her mind racing through possibilities. Whatever was here, it was intelligent. The Thryn, hiding above her, tensed. For the first time in centuries, they understood what it was like to be hunted, not by violence, but by observation. They had never been observed so carefully, so patiently, and with such determination. They had always controlled the narrative. The forest, the mist, and the shadows were their allies. But now, a human was walking among them with eyes that could see beyond camouflage. Ilara continued her exploration, moving deeper into the forest. The Thryn followed. Invisible, careful to avoid leaving traces that she could detect. But no matter how careful they were, they could not completely hide. Ilara's intuition was remarkable. She noticed patterns in the placement of rocks, the bending of branches, and the slight disturbances in the moss. She paused and whispered to herself, "Something's watching. Something intelligent." Night fell quickly on Zifra, faster than on Earth. The sky turned deep purple, and twin moons rose, casting silver light across the forest. Ilara set up her camp near the lake. The water reflected the moons, creating a scene of perfect symmetry. She took out a small device, a scanner designed to detect energy signatures, and switched it on. The readings spiked briefly and then returned to normal. She frowned. Whatever was there, it was powerful, yet subtle, hiding in plain sight. The Thryn watched her with a mixture of awe and fear. They had never experienced curiosity like this from a human. Most species either ignored them, feared them, or attacked them. But this human studied, learned, and adapted. Their mind moved quickly, connecting dots that the Thryn had not anticipated. The Thryn realized something important. Remaining hidden was no longer a guarantee of safety. The arrival of this human meant change that could alter the Thryn's way of life forever. Ilara settled by the lake, recording her observations in her log. "Planet Zyphera is remarkable," she said softly. "Flora and fauna are unlike anything in known galactic databases. But there's something else, something intelligent, hiding. I can't see it yet, but I can feel it." She paused, listening to the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. "I need to understand it, whatever it is." The Thryn, for the first time in their lives, felt exposed. The centuries of training, the mastery of camouflage, and the confidence in their invisibility were no longer enough. A single human had arrived, and with her sharp mind and relentless curiosity, she threatened to reveal what the Thryn had kept secret for generations. As night deepened, the forest seemed alive with possibilities. Stars shimmered above, and the twin moons cast long shadows. Ilara looked around, her senses alert. "I will find you," she whispered, not as a threat, but as a promise of discovery. The Thryn understood. They could hide no longer. And so, under the silver light of Zyphera's moons, the silent observer met the relentless explorer. One had watched for centuries without fear. The other had arrived with courage, intelligence, and determination. The balance of power in the forest had shifted, and a new story was beginning, one that neither would forget. The forest of Zyphera was alive in ways that humans had rarely imagined. Trees stretched high into the purple-tinted sky, their branches thick and twisted. Leaves shimmered with a faint luminescence, glowing softly under the light of the twin moons. Flowers of every color imaginable carpeted the forest floor, filling the air with a fragrance so sweet that it almost distracted from the strange energy readings that Ilara's instruments continued to record. Ilara Vance moved carefully, her boots barely making a sound on the mossy ground. She carried a small scanner in one hand and her digital pad in the other. Every step she took was deliberate. She had learned early in her career that the smallest miscalculation could cost her precious data, or worse. But what fascinated her most was not danger. It was discovery. Something unusual lived here. She could feel it in the subtle vibrations of the forest, in the faint shift of energy that her instruments sometimes caught. Above her, the Thryn watched. They were no longer merely observers. They were cautious hunters, in a situation that felt unfamiliar. Every leaf that rustled beneath Ilara's steps, every branch that cracked or bent, could betray them. The Thryn had survived for centuries by remaining invisible, by letting time protect them. But now, for the first time, time itself was against them. This human did not rush. She did not panic. She noticed everything. Ilara paused near a cluster of glowing mushrooms. Her scanner beeped softly, and she crouched to examine the readings. She touched the edge of one mushroom, careful not to disturb the pattern. "Something's interacting with the environment," she whispered. "It's intelligent, not animal." The Thryn tensed. The forest, which had been their shield for centuries, now felt fragile. One false movement, one misstep, and Ilara might discover them fully. They shifted their form into a series of shadows, blending with the flickering light of the glowing mushrooms and the moon above. Even so, the human seemed aware of something unseen. Ilara stood slowly, scanning the area. Her instincts told her that she was not alone, but when she turned, she saw nothing. The forest appeared perfectly still, yet she could feel it like a presence just beyond her vision. She began to move again, her steps light and careful, eyes scanning every angle. Small disturbances in the moss, slightly bent branches, and the occasional ripple of water in a stream guided her forward. The Thryn followed, silent, weaving among the trees like smoke. They were careful not to trigger Ilara's scanners. But even their mastery of invisibility could not entirely hide the tiny anomalies left behind by their presence. The more she moved, the more she began to notice the patterns. At first, it was subtle rocks arranged unnaturally, leaves that seemed to flutter without wind. But then the patterns became impossible to ignore. Ilara crouched behind a large boulder, watching a small clearing. A faint shimmer in the air caught her eye. Her breath caught, and she whispered to herself, "It's here. I can feel it." Her hand went to a small device she had designed specifically for this moment. A portable holographic projector that could interact with unknown energy signatures. She switched it on, sending a low pulse into the clearing. The Thryn froze. The pulse was harmless, but it could reveal their presence. They shifted quickly, becoming indistinguishable from the shadows and moonlight. Yet, despite their skill, the pulse had done its work. Ilara's eyes widened as she noticed a faint outline in the air, a shimmer that followed the pulse. Her heart raced with excitement. She had never experienced this before. The forest was hiding something intelligent, something that had evolved in complete secrecy. Ilara moved closer, every step calculated, every motion silent. She studied the shimmer, noting its reaction to her devices. The creature, whatever it was, moved with intelligence, responding almost as if it were learning from her actions. Ilara smiled. "You're smarter than I expected," she murmured. "I can't see you clearly, but I can learn from your behavior." The Thryn's mind raced. They had always believed that no creature could match their subtlety. But humans were different. They were unpredictable, persistent, and capable of extraordinary reasoning. This human did not simply react. She adapted. She observed patterns, predicted outcomes, and adjusted accordingly. The Thryn realized, with a mix of fear and awe, that their usual tactics might fail. Night deepened, and the forest seemed to change. Strange, glowing insects emerged, flitting in the air like tiny lanterns. Streams reflected the twin moons, and the mist that often hid the Thryn now made the forest appear ethereal. Ilara moved slowly, her scanners picking up subtle energy readings that fluctuated as if something invisible was following her. She spoke softly into her recorder. "Energy readings are faint but intelligent. Movement patterns suggest an entity that can hide perfectly, but interacts with the environment. I need to remain cautious and observant." The Thryn watched her with growing respect. They had faced explorers before, but none had such patience, intelligence, and calm. Most species that stumbled upon them either fled or attacked. But this human, she studied, she understood, and that was dangerous. Ilara paused beside a small stream, crouching to study the water. Tiny ripples moved unnaturally, as if the stream itself was being manipulated. She placed her hand near the water, careful not to disturb it, and whispered, "You're trying to hide, but you're leaving clues. I can see them." The Thryn felt a pang of panic. They had never been caught in this way. Every century of careful hiding seemed suddenly fragile. One wrong move, and the human could uncover not only them, but all the secrets they had guarded for generations. They considered fleeing, but something within them hesitated. The human intrigued them. She was clever, calm, and fearless. Perhaps they could learn something from her instead. Ilara set up a small observation post near the stream, positioning her devices to capture both energy readings and environmental changes. She worked meticulously, ensuring that her presence did not disturb the natural balance. The forest around her seemed alive with possibility, and though she had not yet seen the entity clearly, she felt its presence with every fiber of her being. Hours passed, and the Thryn continued to observe. They shifted from shadow to shadow, never fully revealing themselves, yet remaining close enough to monitor the human. Each time Ilara adjusted her devices, they adjusted too, almost instinctively. The forest became a game of patience and perception. The Thryn realized something profound. This human was not a threat in the traditional sense, but her intellect, courage, and curiosity made her a force to be reckoned with. Ilara finally settled beside her scanners, reviewing the data she had collected. Her eyes gleamed with excitement. "This is remarkable," she said softly. "Everything about this planet is unique, but there's an intelligence here I've never encountered. I can't see it fully. Yet I feel it. I understand it." She leaned back, gazing at the glowing forest around her. "Whatever you are, I will find a way to meet you." For the Thryn, the forest had never felt so exposed. They had always believed in their invisibility, in the safety of shadows and camouflage. But now, the human's presence made them realize that being unseen was not enough. Intelligence, patience, and courage could pierce even the deepest concealment. For the first time, the Thryn felt a vulnerability they had never known, and a curiosity they could not resist. As the twin moons climbed higher, the forest settled into a quiet rhythm. Ilara's devices hummed softly, recording the patterns of light, energy, and movement. The Thryn remained in the shadows, observing, calculating, and learning. The hunter and the hidden observer were now locked in a silent dance, each aware of the other, each testing limits, and each curious about what would come next. In the stillness of Zephora's night, one truth became clear. The Thryn could hide no longer. The human had arrived, and everything would change. Dawn broke over Zyphora, spilling soft golden light across the forests. Mist curled around the tree trunks, and dew glistened on the luminescent leaves. The world seemed calm, almost peaceful. But beneath the surface, tension ran thick. Commander Ilara Vance had spent the night analyzing the readings from her scanners. They showed fluctuations in energy patterns, subtle, intelligent, and unlike anything she had seen before. Ilara moved quietly through the forest, her eyes alert, her senses heightened. Every rustle of leaves, every ripple in the streams, made her pause. She knew something, or someone, was watching. The Thryn had followed her all night, observing, testing, and waiting. But unlike before, this morning carried a new tension. Ilara was beginning to connect the clues, and the Thryn knew that the time of pure hiding was over. She approached a clearing where the forest opened around a small, crystal-clear pond. The water reflected the morning sun in a way that made it almost impossible to distinguish between the surface and the depths below. Her scanner began to hum softly, picking up a spike in energy readings. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "Something's here. Close." The Thryn, hidden among the thick foliage at the edge of the clearing, froze. For centuries, they had been able to control how much the world could see of them. But this human was different. Her attention was sharp, her intuition precise. They could feel it in the way she moved, the way she scanned her surroundings, and the way she spoke to herself. This was not curiosity without power. This was intelligence matched with skill. Ilara knelt by the pond, gently tossing a small stone into the water. The ripples spread, and she observed them carefully. Something in the water seemed to shift unnaturally, almost as if the ripples themselves responded to the energy around them. Her heart raced with excitement. "You're clever," she murmured, "and careful. But you're here, and I can find you." The Thryn considered retreating. They could vanish completely and escape. But for the first time, they hesitated. This human did not attack. She did not harm. She studied, learned, and adapted. Perhaps, they thought, there was an opportunity in this. They could hide, yes, but could they engage? Could they understand this strange new species that had found them despite centuries of secrecy? Ilara activated her portable holographic projector. It emitted a soft blue glow and a low pulse that reached out in all directions. She adjusted the settings, scanning for anomalies in the forest, and then she saw a faint shimmer in the air, a distortion that pulsed in response to her device. Her eyes widened. "There you are," she whispered. "I knew you were here. Once present. You are. She once present." She whispered, "I knew you were here." The Thryn froze, startled by the acknowledgement. They had never been discovered with such precision. Most beings either feared them, fled, or did not notice. But this human had seen them not fully, but enough to confirm their presence. Ilara took a careful step forward, speaking softly. "I don't mean to harm you. I just want to understand." Her voice was calm, steady, and strangely comforting. "I've never seen anything like you before. Please, show me yourself." Show me. Show me yourself." The Thryn shifted, hesitant. They were not used to being addressed in this way. They had always assumed that discovery meant danger. But this human, there was no fear in her, only curiosity and patience. Slowly, carefully, the Thryn allowed their form to emerge from the shadows. At first, it was only a faint outline, almost like a ripple in the air. Then the shape solidified a lithe, elegant form with a shimmering skin that reflected light in colors that the human had never seen. Their eyes were large, intelligent, and alert, observing her as carefully as she observed them. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Ilara took another step forward, holding her hand out gently. "I'm Commander Ilara Vance," she said. "I come in peace. I want to learn about you, about your planet, about everything." The Thryn studied her, analyzing her gestures, her tone, her intent. They could feel her sincerity. They had been cautious for centuries, but this human radiated a calm confidence that was difficult to ignore. Slowly, they responded not with words, but with a series of gestures, subtle movements that seemed almost like a dance. Ilara watched closely, noting every motion, every shift. She activated a translator program on her device, sending low-frequency signals designed to communicate with unknown species. The Thryn responded, mimicking the rhythm of the signals. Ilara realized she was not speaking the Thryn's language, but she was learning it, step by step, through observation and adaptation. "You understand me," she said softly. "And I understand you. We can communicate." The Thryn's heart, or the equivalent of it, raced. They had never interacted with another intelligent species in this way. Most encounters ended in fear or aggression. But this human, she was patient, clever, and respectful. Perhaps there was something new to learn here. Something worth sharing. Ilara moved closer to the pond, gesturing toward the water. The Thryn followed her movement with curiosity. She picked up a small stone and dropped it into the water again, creating ripples. Then she pointed to the Thryn, then to the ripples, then back to them. The alien seemed to understand. She was showing them how she studied the environment, how she noticed patterns, and how she made connections. For the first time, the Thryn allowed themselves to relax slightly. They had been hiding for centuries, fearing exposure. But here was a being who could see them, understand them, and perhaps even appreciate them. They shifted closer, reducing the shimmer between them and the human, and allowed themselves to be seen more clearly. Ilara's eyes widened in awe. She took careful notes, her hand moving rapidly across her digital pad. "This is incredible," she whispered. "You're intelligent, adaptable. Your camouflage is extraordinary. But I can see you, and I think, maybe, we can work together." The Thryn considered this carefully. Could they trust a human? They had seen many civilizations rise and fall, most of them violent, selfish, or short-sighted. But this human, she seemed different. Her curiosity was genuine. Her intentions were clear. Perhaps this encounter could be the start of something new. Ilara took another step forward, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "I want to learn from you," she said. "I want to understand your world, your species, and your knowledge. And in return, I can share what I know about the galaxy, about life, about survival." The Thryn felt a warmth they had never experienced before. Not from the sun, not from the forest, not from their own kind, but from the human. She was offering partnership, not dominance, respect, not fear, knowledge, not destruction. Slowly, they extended one delicate limb toward her, a gesture of trust. Ilara smiled and mirrored the gesture. For a moment, the world felt completely still. Two species, separated by light years and lifetimes of history, reached toward each other, not with weapons, not with threats, but with curiosity and respect. Then, the Thryn moved fully into view. Their shimmering skin reflected the morning light, their eyes bright and intelligent. They circled the pond slowly, observing her, testing her reactions. Ilara remained calm, steady, and welcoming. Her actions spoke of patience and empathy, two qualities the Thryn had rarely seen outside their own species. "You're remarkable," she whispered, "and I promise, I won't hurt you. I just want to learn, and maybe you can learn from me too." The Thryn tilted their head, considering her words. Perhaps the human was right. Perhaps exposure did not have to mean danger. Perhaps being seen could be the start of understanding, the beginning of a new alliance. They had hidden for centuries, but now they realized something profound. Sometimes, the courage of another species could reveal truths that secrecy could never teach. Ilara spent the rest of the morning observing and interacting with the Thryn. She tested their reactions with small gestures, recorded their movements, and noted the subtle ways they communicated with the environment. The Thryn responded carefully, gradually trusting her more with each action. By midday, the distance between hunter and hidden observer had shrunk to a delicate partnership, one built on respect, curiosity, and a shared desire to understand. As the twin moons of Zyphora began to dip below the horizon, the forest seemed to breathe with newfound life. Birds chirped in unfamiliar patterns. Insects danced among the flowers, and the trees seemed to sway in harmony with the quiet exchange between human and alien. The encounter had ended not with fear or conflict, but with the promise of understanding. For Ilara, it was a moment she would never forget. For the Thryn, it was a revelation, Being seen did not always bring danger. Sometimes it brought discovery, connection, and the possibility of something greater than survival alone. The forest remained quiet, but the air was charged with the energy of possibility. Two species had met, and in that meeting, the first seeds of trust had been planted. And so, the first encounter was complete. The hunt had ended not with confrontation, but with understanding. And the story of human courage and alien wisdom had only just begun. The days on Zyphera passed slowly, but richly. For the first time, the Thryn had allowed themselves to interact freely with a being from another world. Ilara Vance had not only observed them, she had earned a cautious trust. Each morning, she would rise with the twin suns and venture into the forest, her sensors humming softly as they recorded data. And each day, the Thryn followed, learning from her presence and learning to respond in ways that were both protective and curious. Ilara's approach was never forceful. She moved with patience, speaking softly to the forest, documenting every detail, and testing the Thryn's responses through gentle interaction. She had learned that this species was not hostile, they did not strike or attack, but they were cautious. One wrong movement, one loud sound, could send them vanishing into the shadows. And yet, she had discovered that they were intelligent beyond measure. They could manipulate the environment subtly, hide in plain sight, and react to stimuli in ways that humans could hardly predict. The Thryn, in turn, were fascinated. They had never seen a being who could think so quickly, adapt so swiftly, and remain so composed in unfamiliar territory. Most species that had stumbled upon Zyphera had been startled, afraid, or violent. But Ilara observed, she adjusted, and she respected the forest and its inhabitants. Her presence was not a threat. It was an opportunity. Ilara noticed patterns in the way the Thryn moved. When she placed a stone in a clearing, it would be rearranged slightly when she returned. When she left small sensors near a stream, the readings would show subtle energy disturbances. And when she tested a holographic signal, the shimmer of the Thryn would respond almost instinctively. She began to realize that the Thryn were not only intelligent, they were capable of reasoning, of learning, and of anticipating her actions. Remarkable, she whispered to herself one morning as she crouched near a glowing pool. You're more advanced than any species I've encountered. You learn, and you adapt, and you're patient beyond belief. She tapped a small device on her wrist, recording her observations. This will change how humans understand intelligent life. The Thryn, hidden among the branches above, watched her reactions carefully. They had always been the ones studying others, observing without interaction. But now, the roles had shifted. The human had become the observer, the learner, and the teacher all at once. Ilara decided to test the Thryn's responses more directly. She placed a small holographic interface in the clearing and activated it, projecting a series of simple symbols and patterns. Then, she waited. The shimmer of the Thryn approached, pausing at each symbol. Slowly, deliberately. They manipulated the environment, in response touching the ground, tilting branches, and adjusting the reflections of water. It was not random. It was deliberate, intelligent, and precise. Ilara's heart raced with excitement. Yes, she whispered. You understand patterns, you can learn, and you can communicate. She documented every movement, noting the subtle intelligence that seemed almost human in its reasoning. She had expected to study an alien species, but she was discovering something far more profound. An entire way of thinking that challenged every assumption she had made about intelligence and perception. But learning was not without its challenges. One morning, as Ilara walked along the edge of a misty cliff, she misjudged the placement of a device. It slipped from her hands and clattered onto the rocks below. The sound echoed sharply through the forest. The Thryn froze, their form shimmering nervously. For the first time, fear had entered their interaction. They had been so careful, So precise, and yet one small mistake by the human had created a disturbance that could have revealed their full presence. Elara noticed their reaction immediately. "I didn't mean to startle you," she said softly, kneeling down and speaking to the empty air, as if the Thryn could hear her. "I'm learning too. Mistakes happen, but I promise, I will not harm you." Slowly, she retrieved the device, careful not to disrupt the environment further. She realized then that trust was fragile. Even one misstep could undo days of cautious understanding. The Thryn considered her words and actions. They could sense her sincerity. Unlike other species that had stumbled into Zyphora, Elara did not seek control. She did not demand obedience. She observed, respected, and adapted. Perhaps she could be trusted. Perhaps she could become an ally rather than a threat. Slowly, their shimmer settled, becoming steadier and more visible as a gesture of tentative trust. Elara seized the opportunity to communicate further. She began using gestures, sounds, and simple holographic displays to convey ideas. She pointed to trees, streams, and rocks, then to symbols on her device, showing the Thryn the connections she had made between the environment and their energy patterns. The Thryn responded by mirroring her actions, demonstrating their own understanding of cause and effect. A dialogue had begun not with words, but with observation, intuition, and intelligence. Days passed, and the bond between human and alien grew stronger. Elara learned how the Thryn interacted with their environment, how they could manipulate shadows, redirect energy, and alter the growth of certain plants subtly. In return, the Thryn began to understand human reasoning, patience, and curiosity. It was a slow, careful exchange, filled with respect and mutual fascination. One afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the trees, Elara decided to push the boundaries of their interaction further. She approached a grove where a series of large crystals jutted from the ground. "These crystals, they resonate with your energy, don't they?" she asked aloud. She activated her scanner, sending out soft pulses of light and energy. The crystals glowed faintly in response, and the Thryn shimmered, interacting with the display. Elara smiled. "You're teaching me how your world works," she said softly. "And I think I can help you understand mine too." She began showing the Thryn diagrams of the galaxy, stars, and planets she had explored. Slowly, the Thryn responded, tilting their head and adjusting their shimmer as if to indicate comprehension. For the first time, a connection formed not just between observer and observed, but between two species capable of learning from one another. Yet, understanding was not without its conflicts. The Thryn were cautious, often testing Elara in small ways. They created subtle obstacles, moving branches, shifting mist, or redirecting water flows to see how she would react. Each time, Elara responded with patience, intelligence, and respect, never reacting with anger or fear. She learned to adapt to their subtle tests, understanding that they were not challenges to overcome, but lessons to observe. Through this process, the Thryn discovered something remarkable about humans: resilience, empathy, and the ability to learn from mistakes. Unlike other species that had encountered them, humans could adjust, reflect, and understand, not just act instinctively. And in turn, Elara discovered that the Thryn were not merely hidden observers, but wise, intelligent, and highly adaptable beings with a profound understanding of their world. By the end of the fourth day, the Thryn and Elara had established a rhythm. She would explore and document, and they would follow and interact. Small gestures, symbols, and movements became a language of their own. Trust had been built, not by force, but by patience, respect, and understanding. And in that understanding, a new possibility emerged: partnership. Elara looked around the grove of crystals, taking a deep breath of the fresh forest air. "We could learn so much from each other," she said softly. "Your knowledge, your perspective, and perhaps you could benefit from mine too." She activated her holographic projector, displaying maps of distant stars and planets. The Thryn shimmered, circling the display and indicating their comprehension. The alien species had learned to hide for centuries, to survive by remaining unseen. But now, they were beginning to understand something they had never considered. That exposure, when met with respect and intelligence, could lead to trust, knowledge, and even friendship. They had hidden for so long that the world outside had seemed irrelevant. But this human had shown them that understanding could be greater than fear, and connection could be stronger than solitude. As evening fell over Zyphora, the forest glowed softly under the twin moons. Birds sang unfamiliar melodies, streams sparkled, and the Thryn shimmered among the trees, no longer completely hidden but still cautious. Ilara sat by the pond, recording her observations and marveling at the depth of intelligence she had discovered. For both human and alien, the lessons of the day were clear. Conflict was not always a battle. Sometimes it was the challenge of learning to trust, of seeing the world through another's eyes, and of discovering what was possible when fear was replaced by curiosity. The Thryn had hidden for centuries. But now they were learning that being seen could lead to discovery. Ilara had arrived, not as a conqueror, but as a learner. And in that arrival, the first seeds of true connection had been planted, a connection that would change both their worlds forever. The forest of Zyphora had grown brighter in the days since Ilara Vance had first arrived. The twin suns and moons painted the trees in shades of gold and silver, and the streams sparkled with life. For centuries, the Thryn had remained hidden, careful to observe and never interact. But now, for the first time, they moved with purpose beside a being from another world. The human had arrived, not to dominate, but to learn, and in that learning, they had discovered one another. Ilara stepped carefully through the mossy ground, her sensors humming softly. She had spent many days observing the Thryn, documenting the forest, and recording the subtle energy patterns that pulsed around the planet. But now, she wanted more than data. She wanted understanding, and she sensed that the Thryn were ready to give it, if only she approached with patience and respect. The Thryn shimmered into view, no longer fully hidden. Their elegant, lithe forms reflected the light of the twin moons, and their large, intelligent eyes studied her with curiosity. For them, this was new. They had always believed that exposure led to danger, but Ilara had proven otherwise. She had shown them that trust, patience, and understanding could create connections stronger than fear. Ilara. One of the Thryn communicated through a series of subtle gestures and shimmering light pulses. Ilara had learned to interpret these signals over the days, and she smiled in return. "I think we can understand each other fully now," she said softly. "I want to learn everything about your world, and I want to share what I know with you." The Thryn approached the pond where Ilara had first met them. They circled the water slowly, demonstrating a delicate ritual of interaction that seemed almost like a greeting. Ilara mirrored their movements, careful to respect their customs. Slowly, the air of caution that had defined their first encounter began to lift. There was trust now, fragile but growing, between two species separated by light years, but united by curiosity. Over the next few hours, Ilara and the Thryn explored the forest together. She showed them holographic maps of nearby star systems, explaining the planets she had visited and the civilizations she had encountered. The Thryn responded with their own forms of communication, shifting their shimmer, tilting their heads, and manipulating the environment in ways that conveyed knowledge about Zyphora. Trees bent slightly, water rippled with purpose, and patterns in the moss revealed intricate designs only visible to those who could read them. "Ilara," one Thryn shimmered, "you can learn quickly. You understand the patterns of life here. Its movements emphasize the complexity of Zyphora's ecosystem. We can show you more. 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 We can show you more." Ilara nodded. "And I will show you the galaxy beyond this forest. Together, We can learn things neither of us could alone. As the day progressed, they approached a section of the forest that had remained untouched by humans or other intelligent species for centuries. Giant crystal formations jutted from the ground, glowing faintly in response to the Thrin's energy. Streams wove between them like silver threads, and the air vibrated softly with natural resonance. Ilara was awestruck. "These crystals, they're like a record of your world," she whispered. "They respond to energy. They hold knowledge." She knelt, placing her hand gently on one of the glowing stones. The Thrin shimmered, guiding her, showing her how to read the vibrations. Slowly, the patterns became clear messages from the forest itself. Data about the growth of plants, the movement of water, and the balance of energy across the planet. Ilara recorded everything, her mind racing with excitement. "This is incredible," she said. "Your planet is alive in a way I've never seen before. And I think we can protect it together." The Thrin observed her carefully. Humans had often been destructive in other worlds they had encountered, but Ilara's words carried sincerity. She did not seek to take, dominate, or exploit. She sought understanding and partnership. Slowly, the Thrin realized that humanity's curiosity and courage could be an ally to Xifera, not a threat. By evening, they had returned to the pond, where reflections of the twin moons danced on the water. Ilara set up a small holographic interface, projecting images of her ship, the galaxy, and the civilizations she had encountered. The Thrin watched intently, adjusting their shimmer to indicate comprehension. "You see," Ilara said softly, "I have traveled far and seen many worlds. Some are peaceful, some less so. But I believe we can learn from one another. We can work together to protect life, knowledge, and understanding." The Thrin paused, considering her words. They had hidden for centuries, trusting only the shadows. But now, they sensed that partnership could be stronger than solitude. Trust could create a bridge between species that, until now, had been separated by distance and fear. Slowly, the Thrin extended a limb toward her, a gesture of friendship. Ilara mirrored it, placing her hand gently against theirs. The forest seemed to respond. The leaves rustled softly, the water shimmered, and a gentle breeze moved through the trees, as if celebrating the alliance. For the first time, the Thrin understood that being seen did not always mean danger. Sometimes, being seen could mean understanding, growth, and discovery. And for Ilara, the realization was equally profound. Humans were capable of forming bonds that could reach across worlds, bridging gaps that once seemed impossible. Over the following days, their collaboration deepened. Ilara learned how the Thrin could influence plant growth, control energy flows, and maintain the balance of life on Xifera. She shared knowledge of human technology, star maps, and exploration strategies. Together, they developed methods to observe the planet without disturbing it, to study its ecosystems without harm, and to communicate with the creatures that shared their world. One day, while exploring a distant valley, they discovered an ancient grove filled with enormous trees that seemed older than time itself. The Thrin shimmered with reverence, guiding Ilara around the grove and showing her the subtle patterns that indicated centuries of history. Ilara marveled. "This is incredible," she said softly. "Your world has knowledge that humans could never imagine, and we have much to learn from you. Foremen, we are." The Thrin responded with a series of subtle gestures, showing appreciation and trust. They moved through the grove together, sharing knowledge silently, each learning from the other's methods, intelligence, and understanding. By the end of the 5th day, a new bond had been established. The Thrin, once hidden and cautious, had begun to trust humans. And Ilara, who had arrived seeking discovery, had found friendship, knowledge, and a partnership that could change the course of exploration for both species. As night fell, the twin moons reflected on the crystal-clear pond. Alara and the Thryn sat together by the water's edge, observing the reflections of the stars above. The forest was alive with energy, every tree, plant, and stream resonating with life. And in that life, a new alliance had been formed, one that would endure beyond a single planet, beyond a single encounter. Alara activated her communicator, sending a message to the Galactic Council. She described the Thryn as a highly intelligent, peaceful species capable of cooperation and mutual learning. She detailed the forests, the crystals, and the energy patterns, explaining how humans and Thryn could work together to protect Xiphora and preserve its unique ecosystem. The Thryn shimmered beside her, observing the display and acknowledging her actions. They understood the importance of this step. By sharing knowledge with the wider galaxy, they could ensure that Xiphora would remain protected, that their world's secrets would not be exploited, and that new partnerships could form. Alara turned to them with a gentle smile. "We've only just begun," she said. "There is so much to learn, so much to explore. Together." The Thryn shimmered brightly, a signal of approval, trust, and hope. For centuries, they had hidden, observing from the shadows, fearing exposure and danger. But now, with the arrival of a single human, they had learned that being seen could bring understanding, friendship, and a new future. And so, under the light of Xiphora's twin moons, a new alliance was born. One species had arrived from the stars, courageous and curious. The other had hidden for centuries, wise and patient. Together, they had discovered that knowledge, trust, and cooperation could bridge worlds. For Alara, the journey had proven once again that humans were capable of extraordinary courage, curiosity, and understanding. And for the Thryn, the encounter had shown that sometimes, stepping into the light could bring rewards far greater than the safety of shadows. The forest whispered around them, alive with possibility. And in that whisper, both human and alien understood the truth. The galaxy was vast, full of wonder, and waiting for those willing to explore it together. Xiphora had changed forever, and the story of the human and the Thryn of curiosity, courage, and alliance would be remembered across the stars.